Hey guys, Stephen Johnson here again. We're looking at Bible study on Acts chapter 15, which will be coming up February 21st in our sermon series on the book of Acts. So this week we're going to do something a little different. We've been looking at three basic questions as we look at the different passages in Acts. The first question is, what is the Bible saying here? The second question is, what does this passage mean? Meaning to the original writer, to the original hearers. And I always say hearers because most people didn't read. They actually had the Bible, the passages read to them. And then the third thing is, what does it mean to me? How does this apply to my life? So I encourage you to continue to ask those questions every time you approach the text. That is, in a sense, that is the absolute foundation of Bible study. It's answering those three questions. Everything else we give you are just tools to help you answer them better. So this week we're going to be looking at the passage in Acts where Paul and Barnabas go to Jerusalem to talk to them about their ministry with the Gentiles. And what happens in this chapter is it kind of encapsulates what's been going on the last few chapters. So it's a good time for us to look at the nature of narrative story in general. So most of the Bible is actually narrative. What I mean by narrative is just it's telling a story. So you have books like Romans and Galatians where Paul is giving a kind of a treatise on some topic or some theological point. But most of the Bible is actually telling the story of God's people. So the first 5 books of the Old Testament, that's the story of the creation of the world and the creation of Israel, if you look at it that way. Then you have the story of Joshua and Judges, where that's the story of conquering the land and getting to the point where Israel has a king. 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, that's the story of the kings of Israel. And then you've got books like Ruth, the story of a woman from Moab who ends up becoming the great-grandmother of King David, or the great-great-grandmother. And you've got stories like books of Esther, where you've got this wonderful work of God amongst his people in a foreign land. And you've got books like Nehemiah and all these historical books in the Old Testament. And then in the New Testament you have the 4 Gospels in the book of Acts, which are all telling a story, all of it narrative. So that's the bulk of the Bible right there. So it's really important for us to understand how narrative works. So what I'd like for you to do this week is actually outline the flow of the story in Acts chapter 15. Now, the book of Acts as a whole is one story, but then there are also little sub-stories inside. And so we can use this tool both to look at the entirety of the book of Acts and to look at every story in the book of Acts. And we're going to be doing the types of things that you may have not liked very much in school growing up. What is the character? Who are the characters? What is the setting? What is the rising action? What's the climax? What's the resolution? How does it all resolve at the end? And I'm going to actually post a little worksheet below this video. There'll be a link to a worksheet that'll help you to analyze the different parts of this story. And what I want you to do is print out one of those worksheets and actually write on the worksheet, write on the page, what you think is the rising action, what you think is the climax, who are the characters, what is the setting, what is the context in which this story takes place. And then bring that to your group this week and share your ideas. Now, the great thing about stories is there are different ways to look at a story. So sometimes you might think that the climax is in one spot and someone else thinks it's in another spot. It is possible that one of you is wrong, but it's possible that you're just looking at the story from 2 different perspectives, and that's okay. But just be willing to kind of give and take a little bit. Maybe acknowledge that, oh, you may have missed something, or as a group acknowledge, oh, there's 2 different ways to approach this, and it doesn't necessarily change the meaning of the passage, but how we look at it impacts how we view the whole thing. And then as you do this, you'll have an opportunity to understand how the different aspects of the story fit into your understanding of those 3 questions. What does it say? What does it mean? Or what did it mean to the original writer and hearers? And then what does it mean for us today? How do we apply this in our life? So hopefully you'll have a great, wonderful study on this. A couple of little historical tidbits to notice. It's interesting, the relationship of the Pharisees and the early believers. So that's a little piece of information that you might take note of. And also the comment that I believe James makes about it being in common agreement between the apostles and the leaders and the Holy Spirit. So that's something to take note of as well. And see what you can decipher from those two aspects of the story. All right, have fun. I'll see you next week. Bye.